What if the most guarded spiritual system in Western history was never about belief, faith, or religion at all, but about how reality itself is engineered? What if I told you there's a hidden blueprint, a kind of source code for the universe, that was discovered nearly 1,000 years ago and intentionally kept secret? This isn't a story about mysticism. It's a story about a radical science of consciousness. Around the year 1200, a small, discreet circle of Jewish scholars in Provence, France, stumbled upon something extraordinary. They were looking at sacred texts that most people read for moral lessons, historical accounts, or divine commandments. But this group saw something entirely different. They weren't reading stories. They were reading a technical diagram, a schematic of existence itself. This was the true birth of what we now call Kabbalah. And the first thing we need to understand is that it wasn't mysticism. It was a rigorous, analytical system for decoding the operating system of the cosmos. Forget everything you think you know about Kabbalah. Forget the red strings, the pop culture references, the vague notions of esoteric spirituality. The original Kabbalists were not dreamers. They weren't abstract philosophers floating in the clouds. Think of them as the theoretical physicists of their day. Their laboratory wasn't filled with beakers or telescopes. Their laboratory was consciousness itself. While other spiritual traditions were built on faith, rituals, or philosophical debates, these thinkers chose a completely different path. They proposed a revolutionary idea. What if the human mind, when properly trained and disciplined, is the ultimate instrument for observing the fundamental nature of reality? They embarked on a journey inward, a journey that required decades of disciplined introspection and mental training. This wasn't about having visions or talking to angels. It was about systematic, repeatable observation of the inner workings of their own awareness. And through this intense, focused work, they discovered something that shattered all conventional understanding. They found that the universe, which appears to us as a chaotic, random, by an often meaningless place, is actually governed by a precise, predictable, and deeply mathematical order. And here says the most mind-bending part. This order was indeed just visible in the stars or in the world of plants and animals. They saw the same patterns, the same fundamental architecture, repeating itself at every single scale of existence. From the smallest particles of matter they could conceptualize to the vast expanse of galaxies, from the intricate wiring of human psychology to the rise and fall of entire civilizations. It was all built on the same underlying blueprint. The same geometric and numerical relationships echoed everywhere, from the macrocosm to the microcosm. This wasn't a metaphor. They saw it as a literal, structural truth. This single insight changed everything. It completely dismantled the common assumption that our consciousness is just a passive observer, a camera simply recording an external world that exists independently of us. That's not what they found. Instead, they came to a stunning conclusion. Our consciousness is not separate from the universe. It is a reflection of it. In fact, our consciousness is structured to perfectly mirror the architecture of existence itself. The way our minds process information, form ideas, and experience emotions follows the very same principles that build stars and shape galaxies. This meant that to study consciousness was not just some navel-gazing exercise. To study consciousness in its deepest, most fundamental state was to study the blueprint of creation itself. The map was inside of us all along. If you could understand the structure of your own mind, you could understand the structure of everything. This revolutionary understanding wasn't just left as an abstract idea. It was systematized and codified in an ancient and incredibly dense text known as the Sefer Yetzirah, which translates to the Book of Formation. Now, it's crucial to understand what this book isn't. It's not a religious text in the way we normally think of one. You won't find moral commandments, stories of prophets, or rules for worship. It's a technical manual. It's a terse, highly compressed guide describing how reality is assembled from its most fundamental components. And what were these components? This is where it gets really interesting. The building blocks of reality described in the Sefer Yetzirah were not the classical elements of fire, air, water, and earth. The building blocks were fundamental components of consciousness itself. Things like numbers, letters of the Hebrew alphabets, not as symbols for language, but as vibratory forces, as fundamental operators that structure energy into form. The shocking conclusion they reached was this: reality is not built from matter. Matter is a secondary effect. Matter is what happens when structured awareness, when information crystallizes into a dense, perceivable form. Matter is built from consciousness. Think about that for a second. The entire physical universe is a projection of a deeper, informational, and conscious reality. This is an idea that modern quantum physics is only now beginning to grapple with, the idea that the observer and the observed are inextricably linked, that at its base level, the universe seems to be made of information. These ancient scholars were exploring that concept 1,000 years ago. Because these methods were so powerful, and because the insights they generated were so potent, access was severely restricted. This knowledge wasn't shouted from the rooftops. It was transmitted quietly, from teacher to student, only to those who had demonstrated the maturity, the discipline, and the psychological stability to handle it. This wasn't about elitism or keeping secrets for the sake of power. It was a safety protocol. They understood that these techniques were like a powerful technology for the mind. Used correctly, they could lead to profound understanding and personal transformation. But misused or applied by an unprepared mind, they could be destabilizing. They could literally fracture a person's psyche. You couldn't just read a book and become a Kabbalist. You had to undergo years of rigorous training to prepare the vessel, your own mind, to safely contain this powerful knowledge. So, as we begin this journey together, let's set aside the mystical baggage and approach this from a new perspective. Kabbalah, in its original form, was not a belief-based spirituality. It was a disciplined, empirical system for mapping how consciousness generates reality. It was a science built on intellectual rigor, guarded by a necessary secrecy, and founded on the radical idea that consciousness is not something in the universe. The universe is something in consciousness. The human mind is not just a tool for understanding the architecture of reality. The human mind is that architecture, and by learning to read its blueprint, we can begin to understand the very fabric of our existence. Thanks for watching, and if you're ready to go deeper down this rabbit hole, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Have you ever wondered if there's a hidden blueprint behind every single creative idea you've ever had? A secret sequence that turns a fleeting thought into something real? What if I told you that ancient mystics didn't just ponder the universe, they actually mapped it out? They created a functional guide to how consciousness itself works. This isn't about blind faith or abstract symbols. It's a practical system for understanding creation. The Kabbalists discovered something profound. They identified 10 fundamental modes of consciousness, 10 specific states of being that act as a bridge between infinite, untapped potential and our everyday lived reality. They called this structure the Tree of Life. But don't get caught up in the name or the image. Think of it less as a tree and more as a dynamic flowchart, a functional map that shows how anything and everything comes into being. Each of these 10 states, called Sephiro, isn't some abstract concept you have to believe in. It's a state of consciousness that you can directly experience for yourself. Imagine pure, infinite white light, the source of all potential. When this light passes through a prism, it separates into a spectrum of distinct colors. In the same way, the infinite awareness of the universe differentiates into 10 specific qualities. It starts with the purest, most undefined creative spark, and flows all the way down to the solid, physical world we can touch and see. What's truly revolutionary about this map is that nothing happens randomly. Each stage, each sephira, emerges from the one before it with an almost mathematical precision. It's a logical, predictable cascade. This is why so many different fields, from human psychology and personal development to the stages of a business startup or the process of writing a song, all seem to follow similar, predictable patterns. They are all expressions of this one universal creative process. The Tree of Life isn't just about spiritual ideas. It's the operating system for reality itself. So, how does this system actually work? The entire structure is organized around 3 core forces, or pillars, that are in a constant dynamic dance. First, there's the pillar of expansion. This is the force of pure, unbridled growth. It's the energy of generosity, of saying yes to possibility, of pushing boundaries and exploring new frontiers. Plink of brainstorming, where no idea is a bad idea. It's pure, limitless, creative energy wanting to burst forth. This is the drive to give, to share, and to expand into the unknown. But of course, pure expansion without any limits would just be chaos. That's where the second pillar comes in, the pillar of restriction. This is the force of structure, of boundaries, of discipline. It's the critical voice that asks, but how will this actually work? What are the rules? What are the limitations? This pillar provides the container for all that expansive energy. It gives it form, definition, and a framework to operate within. It's the editor, the analyst, the project manager. It brings focus and clarity. Now, these 2 forces, expansion and restriction, are in direct opposition. If you only have expansion, you have big dreams, but no follow-through. If you only have restriction, you have perfect plans, but no passion or energy to make them happen. This is where the third and most important pillar comes in, the pillar of balance. This is the central column, the path of integration. It's where the explosive energy of expansion and the focused discipline of restriction come together to create something that is both inspired and workable. It's harmony, it's synthesis. It's where potential becomes actual. This three-pillar dynamic governs literally everything in our lives. Think about a relationship. You need the expansive energy of love and shared dreams. But you also need the restrictive boundaries of commitment and mutual respect. Without both integrated in balance, the relationship fails. Think about building a business. You need the big vision, the expansive idea, but you also need a business plan, a budget, and to structure the restrictive elements. A successful business balances both. Every failure, every creative block, every collapsed project can be traced back to an imbalance in these three pillars. When one force completely dominates and the others are ignored, the whole system breaks down. If you're all restriction, you become rigid and stagnant. The key to successful creation is learning to consciously navigate and balance these forces within yourself and your projects. Let's trace this process from the very beginning, from a single idea to a final product, using the map of the tree of life. It all starts at the very top with a sapphire called Keter, which means the crown. This is that moment of pure inspiration that seems to come from nowhere. It's a sudden flash of insight, a light bulb moment. It's pre-verbal, pre-thought. It's just a pure, emergent potential that pops into your consciousness. You can't force it, it just appears. Immediately following that spark, the energy flows into the next state, chokma, or wisdom. This is raw, dynamic, expansive, creative energy. It's the yes energy that wants to run with the idea. It's the right brain, big picture visions. At this stage, you don't question it. You just feel the power and potential of the initial insight. It's pure forward momentum. But that raw energy needs a container. So, the flow moves across to Bina, which means understanding. This is the restrictive force kicking in. Here, you start to give the idea structure. You analyze it, you define it, you ask questions. What does this idea mean? This is the left brain, analytical mind, building the blueprint and the framework for the expansive energy of Chokma. From there, the energy continues to flow down the tree, activating different states of consciousness. It moves into the realm of emotions, like the desire to give and connect. It activates the energy of persistence and endurance to overcome obstacles. It engages the intellect and the power of communication to articulate the vision. Each step is a logical progression, bringing the idea closer and closer to reality. Finally, after passing through all the stages of development, refinement, and integration, the energy arrives at the very bottom of the tree, a state called Malkut, which means the kingdom. This is the physical world. This is the finished book, the launched company, the completed painting, the healed relationship. The idea is no longer just an idea. It's something real. something tangible that exists in the world. As you can see, there's nothing mystical or spooky about this. It's a deeply practical and logical description of how creation actually works. Step by step, the tree of life isn't a belief system to adopt. It's a diagnostic tool to use. By understanding this map, you can pinpoint exactly where your creative projects are getting stuck. Are you trapped in the dream phase, all chokma with no bina? Or are you paralyzed by analysis, all bina with no creative spark? Learning to see your own life and work through this lens gives you a powerful ability to self-correct and consciously guide your own creative process. It reveals the hidden architecture of reality and empowers you to become a more deliberate, effective, and balanced creator. This is the true power of the tree of life, not as a symbol to be worshipped, but as a functional system to be lived. Have you ever tried to change something in your life? Put in all the effort, had the best intentions, but it just didn't stick. You try to lose weight, but the pounds creep back on. You vow to be more patient in your relationships, but old arguments flare up again. Why does this happen? We're trimming the leaves when the problem is at the root. The ancient Kabbalists had a profound map for this, a way of understanding reality that explains why so many of our efforts fail. They taught that our experience isn't just one single layer of reality. Instead, it operates across 4 distinct, simultaneous worlds. Think of it like a 4-story building, where what happens on the top floor determines everything that happens below. Trying to change things on the ground floor without even knowing about the other 3 floors is a recipe for frustration. This framework is called the 4 worlds, and it's a core concept built upon the tree of life. Understanding these worlds is like being handed a master key to unlock lasting transformation. It's the difference between constantly battling symptoms and finally addressing the source of your challenges. So, let us journey through these 4 layers of existence and discover why fixing your life from the outside in is almost always doomed to fail. The first and highest world is called Atzilot, the world of emanation. This is the realm of pure, undiluted potential. It's the source code of the universe. Before an idea even becomes a thought, before a tree is even a seed, its pure essence exists here in Atzilot. There's no separation, no form, just pure archetypal energy. It's the divine spark, the initial what-if from which everything else unfolds. Imagine a brilliant, formless light containing the potential for every color, every shape, every possibility in the cosmos. That's Eitzilut. It's not something we can easily grasp with our rational minds, because it exists before the mind itself takes shape. This is the ultimate source, the blueprint of the blueprints. Descending from that pure potential, we arrive at the second world, Briar, the world of creation. If Eitzilut is the formless light, Briar is where that light is organized by a prism into distinct colors and patterns. This is the world of pure intellect, of structured intelligence. It's where the raw potential from Eitzilut gets formed into the first coherent blueprints or concepts. Great visionaries, inventors, and innovators, people like Leonardo da Vinci or Steve Jobs, unconsciously tap into Braya. They don't just have an idea. They access a fully formed conceptual reality. This is the realm of universal principles, mathematical laws, and the grand architectural plans of existence. It's where the thought table exists as a perfect concept before anyone ever thinks about wood or nails. This is the level of pure vision. Next, we move down into the third world, Yetzirah, the world of formation. This is where things get personal. Bria's cool, detached blueprints are now infused with energy, emotion, and imagination. Yetzirah is the world of the heart, of feelings, of psychological patterns. Your habits, your fears, your desires, your dreams, they all take shape here. It's the internal weather system of your soul. Think of it as the emotional and energetic charge that gets attached to the intellectual concepts from Braya. A blueprint for a house in Braya is just a plan. In Yetzirah, it becomes a home filled with feelings of warmth, safety, or maybe even anxiety and conflict. This is where our personal narratives are written and where our emotional programming is stored. It's a powerful, dynamic, and often turbulent world. Finally, we arrive at the world we know best. The fourth world, Asaya, the world of action. This is the physical, tangible reality. It's your body, your behavior, the chair you're sitting on, the words you're hearing right now. It's the world of results, of events, of all things made manifest. Asaya is the final expression, the concrete outcome of the energies flowing down from the three higher worlds. Every single thing you experience in your physical life, your relationships, your bank account, is an expression in Asaya. It's the ground floor of our four-story building. Here, S, the critical insight from the Kabbalists. Every experience exists in all four worlds at the same time. A simple conversation isn't just happening in Asaya. It has an emotional dimension in Yetzirah, a conceptual framework in Braya, and an archetypal root in Atzilut. Now, let's connect this back to why our efforts to change often fail. Most people operate exclusively in Asaya. They try to change their behavior, their circumstances, their physical results. Let's say you want to be healthier. That's a great start. But what happens when you're stressed? You might fall back into old eating habits. Why? Because the problem wasn't just your actions in Asaya. The stress is an emotional pattern from Yetzirah. Perhaps below that, in Braya, you hold a deep-seated mental model that says, I am not the kind of person who is fit, or food is my only comfort. And even deeper, in Atzilut, your core life purpose might not be aligned with the archetype of a disciplined warrior. You're trying to repaint the walls on the first floor when the foundation is cracked. On the second floor, and the architectural plans on the third floor are for a completely different building. Trying to change your actions in Asaya without addressing the emotional patterns in Yetzirah, the mental models in Braya, and your archetypal alignment in Atzilut is like trying to hold back the tide with a bucket. The pressure from the higher worlds is too strong. Sooner or later, the old patterns will reassert themselves, and your willpower in Asaya will be overwhelmed. The transformation collapses because it was built on unstable ground. Let's take another common example. relationships. A couple is fighting all the time. They go to therapy and learn new communication techniques. That's an asile level fix, changing their actions and words. It might help for a little while, but what if the real issue is in it? Perhaps one person has a deep-seated fear of abandonment from childhood, and the other has a history of feeling emotionally smothered. No amount of "I feel" statements in a sire will fix those powerful emotional charges in Yetzirah. Or what if the problem is in Brea? Maybe they have fundamentally incompatible mental models of what a relationship should be. One person's blueprint for partnership is based on total independence, while the other's is based on complete merger. They are literally working from two different sets of architectural plans. They will constantly be in conflict because their core concepts of reality don't align. And what about heightened? Perhaps their core archetypes, their soul's purpose are pulling them in opposite directions. One might be a wanderer archetype, destined to explore, while the other is a hearthkeeper, destined to build a stable home. At the deepest level, their souls are on different journeys. Trying to fix communication techniques in Osiah when these deeper misalignments exist is utterly futile. This is the genius of the Kabbalistic approach. The ancient masters did unsit around trying to manifest a better outcome in the physical world. They didn't just focus on affirmations or actions. They understood that to create real, lasting change, you must work at the correct level. They would diagnose the problem by looking up the chains. Is this an issue of action, emotion, thought, or essence? They would start their work at the highest possible point of leverage. If you can shift a mental model in Brea, or heal an emotional wound in Yetzirah, the changes will naturally and effortlessly flow down into Osiah. You're no longer fighting reality. You're flowing with it from its source. This chapter's core lesson is that reality unfolds through these four interdependent layers. Lasting change doesn't come from wrestling with effects. It comes from transforming causes. The next time you find yourself stuck, trying to force a change in your life that just won't stick, ask yourself, am I working at the right level? Am I just polishing the results in Osiah? Or am I willing to do the deeper work of transforming the patterns in Yetzirah and the blueprints in Brea? Understanding the four worlds gives you a map to do just that. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. We have so much more to explore together. What if I told you that awakening isn't about becoming some brand new, enlightened person? What if it's about realizing you were never who you thought you were in the first place? This is one of the most profound and challenging ideas in spirituality, and it's at the heart of the final stages of the Kabbalistic tree of life. Welcome to the abyss. Kabbalists weren't speaking in metaphors when they talked about crossing the abyss. They were describing a very real psychological and existential threshold. It's a fundamental shift in perception. Below this line, your identity feels entirely personal. You are you, a separate individual with a specific history, a name, a collection of memories and desires. You are a character in your own story. But what happens when you cross that line? Above the abyss, consciousness begins to recognize itself not as a separate fragment, but as a universal, interconnected whole. The story is no longer just about you. It's about everything. This isn't just a philosophical idea. It's an experience. The journey across is facilitated by what is known as dot. Now, dot is unjust a Hebrew word for knowledge in the way we usually think of it, like collecting facts or information. It's not about reading more books or memorizing ancient texts. Dot is direct knowing. It's the kind of knowing you feel in your bones, an undeniable, experiential truth. Think of the difference between reading a description of a strawberry and actually tasting one. Dot is the taste. And here, a common misconception needs to be cleared up. Many spiritual traditions talk about destroying the ego, but that's not what happens at dot. The ego isn't annihilated. It's recontextualized. It's put into its proper place. Imagine a wave crashing on the shore. For its entire existence, the wave might think of itself as just a wave-separate individual, with a beginning and an end. But then, it has a moment of realization. It understands it's not just a wave. It is the ocean. The wave still has its unique form, its temporary shape, but it now knows its true nature is the vast, boundless water. Its identity expands without disappearing. It doesn't cease to be a wave, but it now knows it is also the ocean. This is what happens to our sense of self. Your personal identity, your history, your personality, they don't just vanish. Instead, you see them as a beautiful, temporary expression of a much larger, universal consciousness. Your personal story becomes one of countless stories that the universe is telling through you. This shift from I am a drop in the ocean to I am the ocean in a drop is the essence of crossing the abyss. Once we cross this threshold, we enter what's known as the supernal triad, the top 3 spheres of the tree of life. These represent the highest, most abstract levels of consciousness. First, we encounter Bina. This is the sphere of deep understanding. It's not just intellectual understanding, but an intuitive grasp of the underlying structure of reality, the hidden patterns and universal laws that govern everything. It's like finally seeing the blueprint of the cosmos. From Bina, we move to Chokma. Chokma is pure, dynamic, creative force. It's the initial spark of creation, the raw energy of life itself. At this level, you're no longer just understanding the structure. You are participating directly in that creative force. It's the transition from being an admirer of art to becoming the artist's hand, channeling the very impulse that brings things into being. And finally, at the very crown of the tree is Keta. Keta is unity. It's the ultimate source, the point beyond all duality. There is no subject and object here. No me looking at that. There is only pure, undifferentiated being. It's the state of total oneness, where all distinctions dissolve into a single, unified field of consciousness. It's the ultimate reality from which everything emerges and to which everything returns. Now, this might sound incredibly abstract, like some mystical escape from the hassles of everyday life. But that's the biggest misunderstanding of all. The goal isn't to ascend the tree and just stay in Keta, floating in a state of blissful unity. True mastery True spiritual maturity is about the ability to move freely up and down the entire tree. It's about taking the profound insights from the highest levels of consciousness, the unity of Keter, the creative force of Chokmah, the deep understanding of Binand, bringing them all the way down. The point is to apply these insights at every level of your existence. You bring that universal perspective into your spiritual practice, into your emotional life, into your mental frameworks, and even into your physical day-to-day actions. How does the realization of universal oneness change how you treat your family, your co-workers, or the stranger at the grocery store? How does knowing you a participant in creation affect the work you choose to do or the way you handle challenges? This brings us to the ultimate and perhaps most challenging insight of the entire system. You are not a passive observer of reality. You are not just a spectator watching a movie unfold on a screen. You are an active participant in the continuous creation of reality. Every single thought you have, every emotion you feel, every action you take is a creative act. It contributes to the way consciousness takes form in this world. Your inner state is not separate from the outer world. It is actively shaping it. This is a profound responsibility. And this is precisely why these teachings were historically guarded. Not because they were some magical secret, but because they are dangerously effective, especially when misunderstood. If you believe your thoughts and emotions shape reality, but you're still operating from a place of fear, anger, or separation from below, the Abistyu can inadvertently create more of that negativity for yourself and others. The power is real, but it requires the wisdom and expanded perspective gained from crossing the abyss to be wielded constructively. So the journey through the tree of life isn't about escaping the world. It's about learning to engage with it more fully, more consciously, and more creatively. It's about transforming your identity from a separate self into an integrated expression of the universal whole. It's about realizing that you are both the wave and the ocean, and learning to dance between the two. The ultimate goal is not to leave your life behind, but to live it with the full depth of who and what you truly are. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss our next exploration. See you next time. If you're still here watching my videos, I want to say something simple. Thank you. In a world of endless noise and distractions, the fact that you choose to spend your time here means more than you can imagine. It means you're one of those rare people who wants to go deeper, question reality, and look inside yourself, not just outside. I'm honestly happy that there are people who share these interests, these questions, this search for meaning. So if you feel this space resonates with you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who might need it. Your support helps this content reach more people who are also quietly searching. Thank you for being here, really.